I'm Jane Applegath. Welcome to the Epic Vision Zone. Does mindful masculinity sound like an oxymoron to you? Well, what if I told you there is a book for men that unlocks the secret to ditching the mask and showing up proudly authentic? And what if this book combined entertainment, wisdom, and comedy on subjects that shape a man's life and the partner he shares it with? Edwin Cole wrote, "Being a male is a matter of birth. Being a man is a matter of choice." Scott Grace has made every mistake in the book when it comes to being a man. After all, his first role model was Tarzan. In Mindful Masculinity, a book for men and the women who love them, Scott Grace removes the male misconceptions, beliefs, and behaviors that no longer serve them. Using hilarious self deprecating humor, he shows where he went wrong and brings to light the new way that attracts people rather than dominates or drives them away, embellishing one's authenticity. An easy read, Mindful Masculinity is broken into 50 clever to read, fun, short takes on subjects that shape a man's life. As a highly sought after singer, speaker, workshop leader, life coach, and stand up comedian, Scott has opened to rock stars, authors, and personal growth celebrities, including Deepak Chopra, Byron Katie, Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, and many more. Combining entertainment, wisdom, and comedy, Scott has parlayed his talent into thought churches, the corporate sector, authorship, and life coaching. Today, Scott is a life coach for men who guides and points the way to taking charge of their growth so that they can make positive impact on the world with their masculinity. Welcome, Scott. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for such a glorious introduction.
Oh, you're very welcome, Scott. And thank you for joining us here. I'm so excited to delve into this subject of masculinity. So let's start at the beginning. What is the story behind authoring your book, Mindful Masculinity?
Well, this is the fourth book, and I never intended or even thought I would write a book about masculinity. And during COVID, I needed to make a little extra money. So I applied for a job doing data processing, which I wasn't looking forward to, customer service at a company called Man Cave America. It was a Bay Area tech company. And the owner gradually got to know my gifts. He started to call on me for some coaching. He would bring staff members to me when they were having difficulties. And he read one of my books and he said, "You're a good writer. I didn't know this about you. Would you be willing to write some essays about men and masculinity? I'll give you some topics and you explore it and we'll see where it goes." And so I, I took those topics, I ran with them, and then my thoughts started to have a life of their own. I started coming up with my own chapter titles, and I told him, "I think we have a book here that's unfolding." And he
Mhm.
supported me all the way, paid me by the hour to write this book.
Wow, how fabulous is that? That was
Yes.
that was that was meant to be. You're
Yes,
getting that
exactly.
job, right? Meeting that individual and that individual seeing your talent. How wonderful is that the universe works in our favor? That's such a great story. I love it. Well,
Mm.
one of the themes that you repeat in your book is working with the inner critic. We've heard a lot about this inner critic. Tell us what the inner critic has to do with masculinity and how men
Mhm.
and women deal with it.
Okay. So the inner critic is the motivating voice inside of you that believes that you need to be criticized, for lack of a better word, in order to motivate and inspire you to make action steps.
Mm.
So it's sort of like the whip that a jockey uses to get the horse moving. And for most of us, it actually doesn't work to be motivated by fear and guilt. So the inner critic is like the appendix. It's like it's something that doesn't really serve a purpose anymore. It used to, and now it's needed to transform into a loving coach. The way that it tries to motivate us is very discouraging, and
Mm,
what we need is encouragement. And what masculine energy is about courage. That's why you said, you know, everybody's born into a male body, but not everybody becomes a man. And what makes you a man is expression of courage. I think it's that simple. And we need to learn how to talk to ourselves in a way that encourages us, uplifts us, makes us want to get out of bed and tackle the world. And
right.
why is the inner critic a masculinity thing? Because
Mm,
women have just as a tough time with it. I would say that the inner critic is a masculine energy that has
mm,
been wounded. It's it's the energy. The masculine energy wants to accomplish things,
mhm,
whereas feminine energy is at its best when it's just radiating beauty and being receptive and receiving love. Masculine energy wants to make a dent in the world, and so when men were sold the original lie, which is your worth has to be proven. You are not worthy and lovable just
mm,
the way you are. You have to accomplish in order to prove your worthiness or your masculinity. That's a big deal for a lot of people. It's like, gotta prove my manhood. And then the inner critic comes along and says, I'll help. Here's how your parents treated you in a certain way. I learned punishment and guilt and all these different motivating tactics from my childhood and from the culture. And now the inner critic is going to carry the tradition and make me feel bad about myself unless I'm doing everything just right.
mm. Yes. I love that analogy, Scott. That is so well put. Um, you painted a picture where the inner critic is the one with the whip. And I just thought, oh, that's a perfect metaphor because whip yourself into shape. Like that's a saying, right? That we use. You just whip yourself into shape. And here we are, the inner critic is it's doing it internally. And you're right, it's not encouraging us, it's discouraging us because whatever you
Mm-hmm.
do, you get to that next level. And the inner critic is like, well, okay, you've mastered this, but get to work, you've got more work to do. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you for that
always
distinction.
more.
Yes, always more. And I do agree
In the
too that go ahead.
in the book, I often break out into poetry and express these truths as my altered ego, the spiritual Dr. Seuss. And this is the way the spiritual Dr. Seuss talks about the inner critic. It's there to protect you, to help you feel strong. So it has to remind you you've done it all wrong. You're weak and you're lazy and you don't have a clue. That's your drill sergeant critic trying to motivate you. The critic wants you to be all you can be. So it gives you these pep talks all day and for free. Oh, the places you'll go and the guilt trips you'll travel as the critic plays judge and bangs down on its gavel. But you always can get some relief from your shame by projecting it on to the others you'll blame. For that is the critic at its beastiest best. It nurses its grievances close to its chest. Republicans, liberals, your parents, your ex. The world is just teeming with folks to correct. If only those fools could conform to your ways, you would get on with life without further delays. So that's just
Beautiful.
a little taste of the poem, and I love how it points out that criticizing ourselves is so painful that we get a little relief when we criticize other people.
Yes. And in fact, some people get a lot of relief and make it a habit. But thank you for that. I love those I mean, Yes, and it's fun and it's engaging and it's spot on. I was just smiling and just wanted to laugh out loud. I thought that was perfect. I
Mm.
loved it. Thank you for that. So I could see the all of your talents coming together, in this book. So moving on then, how do you describe toxic masculinity? Is this the what you were just describing with the inner critic?
That's part of it. Masculinity is life energy. It's testosterone. It needs to be channeled in a way that honors and serves something, someone, and I would say that masculinity is most happy when it's serving feminine energy, when it's
Mm,
protecting, serving, celebrating, and giving to feminine energy. And when it is not, it instead of love, it goes for the substitutes, the love substitutes, like power over women, power over other countries, the sense of being able to be dominant or the best or to build huge towers. And that kind of, that's where male energy goes when it's separated from love, when it's separated
mm,
from its true purpose. And that's what people nowadays are calling toxic masculinity.
mm.
And it
Okay,
comes with a lot of messages like, crying or being vulnerable is a weakness.
hmm.
And nothing can be further from the opposite of the truth.
Right, right, absolutely. Thank you for that. So tell us about your thought on the traditional work ethic and its role in your story.
Yes. Well, the work ethic is born of unworthiness. I am not enough. And I, in some way, have separated from God. It's a Puritan story, it's a Puritan myth that has been the source of a lot of pain and workaholism. And it's not so much that when you let that thought go that you become a lazy bum. It's more like your desire to make a dent in the world, make life easier, better for others, comes from your heart and not this compulsive need to constantly keep moving. That's kind of it. And the spiritual Dr. Seuss has something fun to say about that. I haven't memorized it, but here it is. Um, so then came the blame game, the who cut the cheese. Was it Eve or a snake or the wrong choice of trees? The day-to-day play, all the joy they were given, gave way to the sense we must work for a living. And God did reply, kids, you gotta be kidding. Everything you could want is right here, not forbidden. But they would not, they could not receive the good news. They thought that to play they must first pay their dues. By the sweat of thy brow we must now earn our bread. And they didn't know the gluten had gone to their heads. Then they passed this confusion right on to their kids, hiding their loins with more leaves from more figs, teaching their offspring original sin, who then passed it on to their nextest of kin. And they made their cause noble. They justified pain. To suffer's God's will. No pain means no gain. And if you have suffered through life unabated, when you croak, your rewards card will be activated. That's when you cash in your hard sacrifices and rest up in heaven with the rest of the righteous. Now, there is a line in here that ends with the words work ethic. Let's see if I can just very quickly find it. Um, and so, human beings, we assumed the position of forgetting God's love didn't come with conditions. We dreamed up a God with a list of demands, with rules and with judgments and a whip in his hands. And over the seas came the pure Puritans to spread the work ethic all over the land.
Mm. Wow. Wow. We just need the poetry. I mean, that says it all. Oh my gosh, they are brilliant. Thank you for
Hmm.
that. I am just so in love with this. I'm just going along for the ride and listening to the rhymes and going, "Oh my gosh, he's right, spot on. These are fabulous."
Oh.
Thank you, Scott. And I have to say at the beginning of the podcast, Scott was saying, "Well, sometimes I break out into poetry or song." And I said, yeah, whatever turns you on, just do it, whatever you feel, because oh my gosh, these are absolutely brilliant. Oh, okay, well, let's move on then. Maybe there's another one. I know there's more coming. So, failure. In your book, you describe failure as one of your greatest teachers and an
Mhm.
essential gateway to a more masculine, mature individual. Tell us why that is.
I I essentially, like, failure brought me to my knees, and it was on my
Mm,
knees where I learned how to pray for guidance,
mm,
direction, uh, and I said, okay, my plan has failed, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe God or the universe has a better plan, and maybe, just maybe, my failure is the opening door to God's success. And it also has been so humbling, like, when I had to get that job with Man Cave America, I was so humbled. I was humiliated. Wait a second, I'm a this, I'm a that. What am I doing answering phones and data entry? It was really good for me because I needed that. I needed to know that I could be okay and have self-respect and dignity, even if I was sweeping the streets or having a menial job. That it is, I don't need to be this magnificent, special person to love myself.
mm. Yes, I know we can. There are many of us, if not 99% of us, that can relate to that. You know, we've all had to do things to survive, to come through whatever it is that, has been put on our plate. And it is very humbling, and it does. It really just, breaks you down. But therein lies the experience and the wisdom that we now have to share with others, because
Oh
you're
yeah.
not, there's the story, you're not alone. We've all been there, myself included, and it's really humbling, yes. Uh, Painful, yes. Dark, yes. I mean, there's so many things, but the light is we are the light. And many of sometimes we say, it's not the it we fear the light, it's not the darkness, so we have to bring ourselves back into the light.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that. It does teach us. So you say that the deepest wound for most men is the belief that they're not enough, not good enough, not masculine enough, successful, competent, and the list goes on and on. And women are not immune to this either. So, how do we get over it?
First of all, by becoming conscious and aware of what the story that you're telling yourself. You're telling this story, you've been telling it for a long time, you're collecting evidence that it's true. Your mind is a meaning making machine. So you feed it some idea, it goes out and collects the evidence to prove your case against yourself. The prosecuting attorney wins the case every time. So how do we get through it? I think that's my aim with the book, my coaching. I not fully there yet. I still have an inner critic, but I talk back to it and I say,
Mm,
"Shh, you're not helping. If you want to help, lift me up. See the good. That's going to help."
mm,
So it's like standing up to a bully sometimes. It takes a lot of
mm,
courage to both hear the inner critic saying you're not enough and to do an intervention
yeah,
where you just say enough. This is not helping and you're hurting
yeah,
my feelings. Is that
mm,
what you want? Do you want to hurt my feelings? Because the way you're coming across doesn't work for me.
right. Yeah, that is really interesting too. actually speak to it and say you're not helping, and
Mhm.
acknowledging that that's exactly what you're feeling and thinking. Because often we just go, oh well, we don't even acknowledge it. But
Yeah.
that's a great practice, to just sit with it and say, okay, you're making a lot of noise and I'm not appreciating it. You have a
Yeah.
big mouth. Right.
And
And
I would call that a masculine approach to dealing with the inner critic.
yeah.
And I like to balance that with a feminine approach as well. And the feminine would be like, hey, are you, speaking directly to the inner critic, are you feeling scared that Scott isn't going to accomplish what he's here to accomplish, going the direction he's been going? Are you like just wanting to shake him and wake him up so that he can have everything he wants in life? And the critic feels heard. It feels
Mm,
respected and empathized with. And empathy is a great healer.
right. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to help, dude. And then you
Yeah.
can say, well, your tone of voice is really like diminishing my courage. I don't feel like getting out of bed when you talk to me this way. So if you really do want to help, here's how you can help.
Yes, absolutely.
There
Well,
is a
you might
job
spend.
opening.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a job opening. There's a job for you. You could join Scott's cheerleading squad and be on the sideline and say, "Yay! You can do it. You are doing
Oh,
it. Oh,
yeah.
wow."
Absolutely. I just had a vision of somebody lying in bed all day, and the spouse or the partner goes, "What are you doing up there?" "I'm talking to my inner critic. We're having a conversation."
That would make
Oh
a
my
good
gosh.
comic strip.
Yeah, I know. My mind goes to that. I just have I have a comedic mind. I'm like, oh boy, that would be so funny.
Jane, it is the toughest thing in most people's lives, dealing with the inner critic.
Yeah.
And I created a little monologue that I do when I'm doing comedy, in which I acknowledge that I realized that my biggest addiction, the one that's led me to all my other addictions, is inner criticism. And I noticed that there weren't any 12-step groups for that particular addiction.
Mm.
So I started my own and I called it Critaholism Anonymous. And I wasn't always a critaholic. I used to be able to enjoy a few harmless judgments of myself at parties and social gatherings. And I used to, then it started to become a compulsion. And I would wake up in the morning and start my day with a double shot of straight criticism. And
Mm.
one day I was thinking and driving, and I was pulled over by a policeman. He had clocked me on his radar, judging myself at 84 times per hour, way over the limit in California. And he arrested me for driving myself crazy, inner child abuse, disturbing my own peace. And it was a Sunday. And when I told him I was on my way to the office, he added resisting arrest.
I
So I
get
had to
it.
go to court. And the judge asked me to be my own prosecuting attorney because he knew I had so much experience in that role. And I won the case. I was found guilty. And the judge ordered me to visit a hospital that specialized in the treatment of chronic critique syndrome, which is what he thought I had. And the doctors were blunt. They said, young man, if you don't learn to be more gentle with yourself, you're likely to have a critiac arrest early in life. And that's when I started to rest my critic instead.
I love it. That is so
Mm,
funny. I'm sitting here laughing. Yeah, people can't, if they're not on the video, the podcast, they can't see me. But oh my God, how clever! So clever
mm,
is that, Scott? Oh my gosh.
mm.
Yes, I could see that as a comedy. Oh my gosh. Well, you consider masculine energy as coming from the left side of our brains and feminine
Mhm,
energy from the right side. So is
mhm.
that backed up by science, and why do you stress that repeatedly?
Well, I want to demystify the fact that we all have masculine and feminine energy, yin and yang, and that we need both to function, to be happy, I wanted to bring it down to biology. The left side of the brain is the yang. It's highly intellectual. It diagnoses problems and fixes them, and it it's prone to overthinking when it doesn't work in harmony with the right side of the brain, the intuitive, the allowing, the receptive. The right side of the brain knows things without knowing how it knows.
Mhm.
It's innate intelligence, whereas the left side is the educated part of the brain. And we need more innate intelligence, more heart in this
Mhm.
world than more left brain. We're pretty out of balance.
Right. Yes.
So I wanted to sell it, not sell books, but sell the idea to men that the right side of the brain, you become whole. You become whole brained. You become much more effective in the world. You don't have to sweat so much because you don't just have perspiration, you have inspiration.
Mm. Right. Absolutely. Yes. I could see that and see where you would have a lot of resistance to men who have been living on the other side, living
Yes.
on the other side. So it's
And, and women too.
right.
This is a very left brain culture we've created.
Oh, from birth. I mean, it's all over the world. Actually, I mean, it's not just in North America. A lot more so because there are many cultures that are much more spiritual. But now that we have science to prove a lot of this spirituality, that it's not woo woo. It's all of a sudden the Western culture is like waking up, and it's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing because what the ancients knew, uh, they were way beyond our perception of what we see and how we feel and what is out there and the possibilities that humans have. They knew it. We just didn't understand it in their language.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. So thank you for that. I have a question here in your chapter titled The Righteous Man. You say that men have this need to be right, and that pushes away connection and closeness. How can a man deal with that part of their psyche? Because I know every woman has dealt with this.
Yes. I would say the most important step is the word mindful, becoming aware. I'm all pumped up right now, and it's not very peaceful in my body. And boy, am I attached to being right about this, whatever it is. I'm more worshiping my opinions than my partner. I'm more into being right than being close. And just the awareness of that begins to shift it. And then the willingness to be able to say to somebody right now, i'm I'm a righteous asshole. I feel like so defensive, and instead of acting on it and getting into an argument with you, I would like to take some time to just soothe myself. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to do, and I'll come back to you when I feel more peaceful and more willing to listen and accept the possibility that there's more than one valid viewpoint. There's no It doesn't have to be a right wrong structure to any conversation. Everybody has a valid point of view.
Right. That's fabulous, Scott. And you have really awareness is the key. It is the beginning of the transformation. I feel that the awareness is probably the biggest hurdle that most men have to overcome. Because what you just said, your words, okay, I value your opinion. I, I can't imagine the men that I know saying that. I mean, I would be pleasantly surprised. But it's yes, there is a lot of growing need to be done because that is the key to transformation is first becoming aware of what how you are acting, what you're thinking, what you're doing, how you're responding. You know, it's all very automatic, as we know. Most of us live in our unconscious mind. and we're just on autopilot, and we react the way we've always reacted. So yes, that transformation of becoming aware of your words, becoming aware of your behavior, becoming aware of your habits, that's
Mm,
the first step. Because if you're unaware, you don't think there's anything to transition, there's nothing to change. And the change is where that's the beauty. It's like the butterfly, the change, the brilliance is in the change, and we're always
mm,
changing. So yes, thank you for that. That would be a huge eye opening for many people. So female readers, it's interesting how now I don't find it interesting. I actually find it um, eye opening that more women are reading Mindful Masculinity than men.
mm.
So, why do you think that is?
There is a chapter in the book called Too Cool for School. And it was based on my boss, Henry from Man Cave America. He he offered to all his staff that if they were having even just a personal issue, didn't have to affect their work, that he would pay for them to come to me and get some coaching. And he he was like the only one who consistently took me up on that. And I asked him once, why aren't more people doing this? And he said, well, they think they're too cool for school.
Mm,
And the reason is it's harder for a man to admit that he has a problem, that he's not in control, that, yeah, it's just harder. There's more shame. Shame is a foundation of needing to be right, of wanting to be better than others, wanting to stand out in a crowd. Shame is what makes us stay in bed and not want to face the world and face ourselves. Shame is what makes most people feel safer not looking with awareness at themselves. There's a there's a song I wrote that has it's as if a car was singing, and one of the lines is I used to be afraid of looking under my hood. I was scared what was there was rusty and no good. Then I found what I was made of was nothing to be afraid of. I gave up a life of panic when I turned to my inner mechanic. Yeah, I used to get uptight whenever I was wrong. When I made a mistake, I slammed on the brakes too strong. Then I gave myself permission to love me without conditions. Found the keys to my intuition right in the ignition. Yeah, now it goes on, but
you're
the,
back.
the point, it's just scary for men to go there because they think they need to fix it. I can't just admit that I have a problem. I have to fix it
Mm,
and fix it myself rather
yeah.
than turn it over to what I call the inner mechanic. There's a part of us, a part of life, some people call it God, higher power, doesn't matter to me, that is ready to take over from here. All you need is the courage of self-honesty and to offer it up. Help.
Mm.
It used to be that men would never ask for directions when they got lost in a car. Now we have GPS, but it's that like, oh no, that'll make me look weak asking for help.
Still happens, Scott. I was
Yes.
like, pick up the phone. We can't. This happened just the last weekend. We're looking for a bakery, and it's like they had it wrong on GPS. They had it on the wrong side of the road, and back and forth. And I said, well, we have their number. Why don't you just call them? No, I'm just going to keep checking on the GPS. I was like, oh my god, just call them. They were right there across the street. I saw the sign. I mean, I just caught it by when we were turning, but I was like, oh, see, a woman, I would just pick up the phone and say, look, this is where I am. I've been going back and forth. The GPS hasn't got it right. Where are you? And duh, we would have been there. But no, you can't do that.
As the
It's
spiritual
too
Dr.
funny.
Seuss says, you're doing your best and it's very courageous, but I'll do things myself is not self advantageous.
Yeah. Well, I know that, but I guess it's they need to prove something. I don't know. What can I
Yeah.
tell you? You know,
Maybe that's why
but
the women have been buying the book about 60 to 70% more than men, because they have more permission in our culture to uh, to ask for directions.
yeah. Oh, that's spot on. You're asking for
Yeah.
directions. Mindful
Yeah.
masculinity. Okay, let's look under this hood. I love that analogy. But absolutely. And here's the key with the what you were just talking about, that men see that they have a problem and they can't solve it. My take on it is look at it from a different perspective. If you change that word problem to challenge, then it
Mm.
becomes a whole nother
Hmm.
avenue for a guy. He'll say, so don't look at it as a problem, it's a challenge. Now how do
Hmm.
we master, or how do we overcome this challenge?
Yeah.
That feels more masculine, but also more like, okay, yeah, it's a challenge, I can deal with that.
I can
That's
rise to the challenge.
Yes, yes, exactly. I can, but it is perspective. I mean, that's what life is, right? It's the glass half full or half empty. It's that perspective. How do you see it? So if you
Mm.
don't voice it or think of it as a problem, but that's the thing in
Hmm.
our life, right? Oh, it's a big
Hmm.
problem. Well, what if we change that to challenge? Let's see how we can overcome this challenge. Yeah, it changes the story completely. But thank you for that song as well. I love it. I'll have to come to your show, whatever, wherever that is. And I know you're calling from Mexico, so I'm not sure if you have one there.
Well, there's the internet. I do things on the internet and my YouTube channel. Also, the Audible version of the book, which I read, has a 3 hour bonus concert at the end
Oh,
with all the songs that have relevance to the subjects in the book.
wonderful. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. I can't wait. Well, with your book, you hope to inspire men to make that odyssey from their heads to their heart. How do you advise men to do this?
I don't. Really, I don't. Like, they have to break open by breaking down. And then they come
Mm,
to me or another coach or a book like this, and they're already humbled by life. Their ego's plan didn't work, and their woman left them, or something, tragic happened. And it's the evolutionary driver that brings the awareness that I'm thinking, not feeling my way through life. And it's cost me.
mm,
It's cost me intimacy, aliveness, happiness, joy, spontaneity. And when a man is humbled by life, then I can impart wisdom and help a man reach his heart. And women too, by the way. I'm not just a coach for men. I also have more women clients than
mm,
I do men. And it's about learning the power of vulnerability and
mhm,
taking the energy of the warrior, which historically has been used on the battlefield. The warrior is an archetype that has to summon up tremendous courage. And it's like, nowadays we don't need more warriors on the battlefield. We need more inner warriors looking at their shadow and finding and facing the courage to feel their grief. And the grief turns into bullets and bombs when it's not
mm.
expressed, when it's not allowed.
Yeah.
And we're changing, as you said. We are changing rapidly
Mm,
as a species, maturing
yes.
at lightning speed. No matter
Yes.
who is president. That don't let that fool you.
Yeah, no, we really are. And like I said prior to your answer there, the science is telling us that, the heart emits an energy that's so much greater than any other part of the body. And the heart is what um, puts out that frequency to allow us to bring whatever our reality, like we create our own realities. As Joe Dispenza often says, and I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says, when our thoughts are no longer a record of the past, but a roadmap to the future,
Uh,
that is when we draw our future to us. Because most of us are living in the record of the past. And those are all, the baggage that we bring with us and from our childhood and from our parents' childhood and et cetera, et cetera. And so, absolutely, yes. And so that's when we're learning to come from the heart. That's why they always say, listen to your heart. That's really big in spirituality, but also women. We always say, listen, what does your heart tell you? And sometimes men will go, what does that mean? I've
mhm.
had my husband say, what do you mean? I don't understand. It's so
My
funny,
heart
they
wants me
don't
to
get
eat
it.
that chocolate cake. My heart
Yeah,
wants me to eat that chocolate cake.
yeah,
I'm going
I
to turn
like
off my
that.
mind and just, listening to your heart doesn't mean following the whims of your cravings, desires, and inner
No,
child,
that's not it. No.
instant gratification. No, it's a still small voice.
Yeah.
It's quiet. I mean, sometimes it has to yell, but chorus of one of my songs, follow, follow, follow your heart. Find the still small voice inside. Follow your heart to the fountain of truth and drink from its endless supply.
Wow. Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely. If there was one message you had for the world, what would that be?
Lighten up. Lighten up. You're safe. All is well. We've had overworked adrenal glands from our times in the jungle where we needed to run away from lions. We needed those adrenal glands. We needed the cortisol, pump, pump, pump. Nowadays in the modern world, we don't have lions. We have psychological fears, and they get
Mm,
our adrenal glands just as pumped up as if we were in the jungle. And we need our warrior energy, our courage to turn the attention from the threats we perceive, which are mostly in the mind, to the peace, the balance, the serenity that is right here in between the eyeballs. The pineal gland secretes melatonin and all of these hormones that allow you to be calm and present. And we're returning our seat of attention from the adrenals to the pineal. It's biological and it's evolutionary and it's necessary. We can't keep doing this aggression thing the way we've been doing it.
mhm. Yeah.
We're in a war against nature, like fighting the miracle of the way nature created the earth. That's ridiculous. So it's an evolutionary jumpstart, and you're doing your part, Jane. I'm doing my part. Men, women, those that defy all categories are waking up and finding their contribution to returning humanity to a place of
Mm,
peace and
yeah.
prosperity. And it's going to happen
Yeah.
grassroots. It's not going to happen politically. You
Mm-mm.
can't, you know, you can't look outside yourself for this change to happen.
And it is happening grassroots. It's happening everywhere. The amount of people that are coming to events and teachings and learnings that are all about what you just mentioned. In the ancients they call it the third eye, but it's there's more and more people being drawn to it, and there's a reason for that. It's lighten up and wake up. And that's what's
Mm.
happening. Yeah, absolutely. And I think even though there was such a disruption with COVID, there was also a disruption in the universe with COVID that gave a lot of us the opportunity to realize what is our life really all about,
Yeah.
because we get had some more space to think,
Hmm.
to be with ourselves, to be with our families, to, like, you said you had to go to a job, but that job led you to where you are today. So in a way, it may have been, or in the if we look back on this, may be the shift that the universe has granted us. you know
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, definitely. Well, thank you, Scott, and tell our audience then how they can discover more about your services, your books, and
Hmm.
resources.
Sure. My website is scottsongs.com, SCOTTSONGS.com. And that's a great place to go. If you want to buy the book, Mindful Masculinity, or look at my other books, you go to Amazon and look up Scott Grace, Mindful Masculinity. I have a Facebook, Scott K. Grace, and I have a very prolific YouTube channel. A lot of the Dr. Seuss material is on there, and it's my gift and my honor to combine comedy, entertainment, wisdom, and inspiration, and have it all so that you're at the edge of your seat. Like, this is not just heady stuff. This is entertainment combined with
Yeah,
education and inspiration.
yeah, I love it. We learned so much more that way. Absolutely, there's no question. And because we are here, Scott, on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question for you. If your
Mhm.
life were an epic story, what would the title be?
If my life was an epic story, born of unlimitedness, born of glory,
Mm,
what would the title be that would express how free I experience my journey? I don't need an attorney. I have my own ideas beyond my fears. I see so clear. And the title of my epic journey would be Unlimited to the Max.
mm. I love that. That certainly says it all, for sure. Well, thank you again, Scott, for joining us here today. And once again, for information and to connect with Scott, you can go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages, where you will find all of his social media and direct contact information. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. And don't forget to connect with me at janeapplegath.com, where you can access your free downloads, creative power, and your vision play sheet. Sending you so much love and gratitude. This is the Epic Vision Zone, transforming your dreams into epic success.